Hi kids, it's Mrs. Rodermanis, and I'm back to say hi to y'all with another book, The Adventures of Dr. Dolittle. My boys read it, my husband read it as a kid and loved it. So I'm hoping you will too. There's not a lot of pictures in this book, but it's a fun adventure to listen to. So I'll show you the few pictures as I come to them. And hopefully you'll just enjoy listening to it. I think it's a K through 6th, just because of the fun adventure. Get ready, here we go. The Voyages of Dr. Dolittle. A great deal of what I have written so far about Dr. Dolittle took place before I was born. But I am now writing about that part of a great man's life that I myself saw and took part in. Many years ago, the doctor gave me permission to do this, but we were both so busy then, having adventures and filling notebooks full of natural history, that I never seemed to have time to sit down and write of our doings. Now, of course, I'm quite an old man, and my memory isn't so good anymore. But whenever I am in doubt, I always ask Polynesia, the parrot. That wonderful bird, she is now nearly 250 years old, sits on the top of my desk, usually humming sailor songs to herself, while I write this book. And as everyone who has ever met her knows, Polynesia's memory is the most marvelous memory in the world. First of all, I must tell you something about myself and how I came to meet the doctor. Here's the first picture in the book. It says, the caption on the bottom of the picture says, I would sit on the river wall with my feet dangling over the water. Can you see that? So the pictures are going to be like that. My name is Tommy Stubbins. I am the son of Jacob, the cobbler of Puddleby on the marsh. When I was 9.5 years old, Puddleby was a small town with a river running through it. Over the river was an old stone bridge called King's Bridge, which led from the marketplace to the churchyard on the other side. Sailing ships came up the river and anchored near the bridge. I would sit on the river wall with my feet dangling over the water, watching the sailors as they worked and pretending I was a sailor too. I longed to sail with the ships when they left Puddleby. I wanted to go out into the world to seek my fortune and see foreign lands. I had 3 great friends in Puddleby. One was Joe, the mussel man, who lived in a tiny hut by the edge of the water under the bridge. He made wonderful things with his hands and mended my toy ships for me. Sometimes Joe would take me out in his boat. We would paddle down the river as far as the edge of the sea to get mussels and lobsters to sell. Out there on the cold, lonely marshes, we saw wild geese, curlews, not real sure what that is, red shanks, and many other seabirds. Another friend was Matthew Mugg, the cat's meat man. He was a funny old person with a bad squint. He looked rather awful, but was nice to talk to. He knew everybody in Puddleby. People paid him to give meat to their cats and dogs. The cats and dogs ran to the garden gates whenever they heard Matthew calling. I would go with Matthew, and sometimes he let me give the meat to the animals. He knew a lot about dogs and would tell me the names of different kinds. My 3rd great friend was Luke the Hermit, but I will tell you more about him later. I did not go to school because my father was not rich enough to send me, but I loved animals. I spent my time collecting birds' eggs and butterflies, blackberries and mushrooms, fishing in the river, and helping the mussel man mend his nets. Excuse me. It was a pleasant life, though, of course. I did not think so then. Like all boys, I wanted to grow up in a hurry. I did not know how lucky I was with nothing to worry me. I could not wait for the day when I could leave my father's house and sail down the river and out into the world to seek my fortune. One early morning in the springtime, I was wandering among the hills and came upon a hawk with a squirrel in its claws. The squirrel fought very hard for his life. The hawk was so frightened when he saw me that he dropped the squirrel and flew away. I picked up the poor animal and found that 2 of his legs were badly hurt. I quickly carried him back to town. I went straight to the mussel man's hut near the bridge. Joe put on his glasses and examined the animal carefully, shaking his head. Yon critter's got a broken leg, he said, and the other leg is badly cut. I can mend your boats, Tom, but I don't know how to fix a broken squirrel. This is a job for a surgeon, and a right smart one, too. There be only one man I know who could save yon critter's life, and that's John Dolittle. Who is John Dolittle? I asked. Is he a vet? No, said Joe. He's no vet. Dr. Dolittle is a naturalist. He knows all about animals and butterflies and plants and rocks. I'm surprised you never heard of him. He knows a whole lot about shellfish, too. He's a quiet man, but folks say he's the greatest naturalist in the whole world. Where does he live? Over on the Oxenthorpe Road on the other side of town. Go see him. He's a great man. Thank you, Joe, I said, taking the poor squirrel in my arms and starting towards the Oxenthorpe Road. Meat! M-E-A-T, I heard as I came into the marketplace. There's Matthew Mugg, I said to myself. He'll know where this doctor lives. He knows everyone. I hurried across the marketplace and caught up with him. Matthew, I called, do you know Dr. Dolittle? Do I know John Dolittle, he said. I should think I do. He's a very great man. Can you show me where he lives, I asked. Certainly, he said with a smile. I'm on my way to his house now. I've known John Dolittle for years, Matthew added as we left the marketplace, but I am pretty sure he ain't home. He's away on a voyage. He'll be back any day. I'll show you his house, and then you'll know where to find him. All the way down the Oxenthorpe Road, Matthew hardly stopped talking about his great friend, Dr. John Dolittle. Where did the doctor go on his voyage, I asked. I couldn't tell you, Matthew said. Nobody never knows where he goes, when he's going or when he's coming back. He lives all alone except for his pets. He's made great voyages and wonderful discoveries. As for animals, well, there ain't no one knows as much about him as he does. How did he get to know so much about animals? The cat's meat man stopped and leaned down to whisper in my ear. He talks their language, he said in a hoarse, mysterious voice. The animals' language, I cried. Why, certainly, said Matthew. All animals have some kind of language. Some talk more than others. Some speak only in sign language, but the doctor understands them all, birds as well as animals. We keep it a secret, though, because folks only laugh when you speak of it. He can even write animal language. He's now busy learning the language of the shellfish, but he says it's hard work, and he's caught some bad colds holding his head underwater so much. I do wish he were home so I could meet him, I said. Well, there's his house, said the cat's meat man, that little one at the bend of the road. We were at the very edge of town. The house Matthew pointed to was a small one, standing by itself. There was a big garden around it. There were many fine fruit trees in the garden, but the wall was so high I couldn't see anything else. And when we reached the house, Matthew went up to the front gate, which was locked. A dog came running down from the house. The cat's meat man pushed some meat and bags of corn and bran through the bars of the gate. The dog did not stop to eat the meat. Instead, he took all the things back into the house. He had a strange, shiny, wide collar around his neck. Matthew turned and went back down the steps. I followed him. The doctor isn't back yet, he said, or the gate wouldn't be locked. What were all those things in paper bags you gave the dog? Oh, those were things for the animals to eat, Matthew explained. The doctor's house is full of pets. I give the things to the dog while the doctor's away, and he gives them to the other animals. And what was that strange collar he was wearing? That's a solid gold dog collar, said Matthew. It was given to him when he was with the doctor on one of his voyages long ago. He saved a man's life. How long has the doctor had him? Oh, a long time. Jip's getting pretty old. That's why the doctor doesn't take him on his voyages anymore. He leaves him behind to take care of the house. Jip never lets anyone come inside the garden while the doctor's away, not even me. You'll always be able to tell when the doctor's back because if he is, the gate is always open. I thanked Matthew and went home. I put my squirrel to bed in an old wooden box full of straw. I decided to take care of him myself until the doctor returned. Every day I went to the house with the big garden and tried the gate to see if it was locked. Sometimes the dog Jip would come down to see me, but although he always wagged his tail and seemed glad to see me, he never let me come inside the garden. One April afternoon, I thought I would see if the doctor had come back yet. My squirrel wasn't getting any better, and I was worried about him. I started towards the doctor's house, and on the way it began to look as though it might rain. I reached the gate. It was locked, and I felt very discouraged. I had come every day for a week. I was worried that my squirrel would die before the doctor came back, and I turned away and headed home. Suddenly, rain began to pour down. It got dark, almost like night. The wind blew, thunder rolled, lightning flashed, and in a moment the gutters on the side of the road flowed like a river. There was no place to take shelter, so I started to run home. I hadn't gone far when I bumped into something soft and fell, and when I looked up, sitting on the wet pavement near me was a little round man with a kind face. He wore a shabby high hat and carried a small black bag. "I'm very sorry," I apologized. "I had my head down and didn't see you coming." Instead of getting angry, the little man began to laugh. "It was just as much my fault as yours, you know," he said, smiling. "I had my head down too. But we mustn't sit talking like this. We are soaked. How far do you have to go?" "To the other side of town," I said. "Come to my house and get dried. A storm like this can't last." We ran back down the road together. I wondered who this funny man could be and where he lived. I was a stranger to him, and here he was taking me to his own home to get dried. "Here we are," he said. I looked up and found myself at the front of the steps leading to the little house with the big garden. My friend was running up the steps to the gate with some keys. Surely, I thought, this cannot be the great Dr. Dolittle himself. I suppose after hearing so much about him, I had expected someone very tall and strong. It was hard to believe that Dr. Dolittle was this little man with the kind face. Yet here he was, opening the gate where I had waited for so many days. The dog Jip came rushing out, barking with happiness. "Are you Dr. Dolittle?" I shouted as we raced up the short garden path to the house. "Yes," he said, opening the front door with the keys. "Now get in. Don't worry about wiping your feet. Never mind the mud." I popped in. He and Jip followed, and he slammed the door. My goodness, what a storm. The storm had made it dark outside, but inside, with the door closed, it was black as night. Suddenly, I heard a strange noise, like all kinds of animals and birds squeaking and screeching at once. I heard things hurrying downstairs and along passageways. I felt birds' wings fluttering near my face. Things kept bumping into my legs. I was becoming a bit scared when I felt the doctor take hold of my arm and shout into my ear, "Don't be alarmed. These are just some of my pets. I've been away 3 months. They're glad to see me home again. Stand still while I strike a light." I stood in the pitch black while all kinds of animals I couldn't see chattered around me. It seemed like a weird dream. "My matches are all wet. Have you got any?" the doctor called to me. "No, I haven't," I called. "Never mind," he said. "Perhaps Dab Dab can raise us a light somewhere." The doctor made some funny clicking noises with his tongue. I heard someone climb the stairs again and start moving about in the rooms above, and after a minute I saw the glimmerings of light on the landing above. The animals were silent. "I thought you lived alone," I said to the doctor. "I do," he said. "It is Dab Dab who is bringing the light." I looked up the stairs. The strange-sounding footsteps grew louder, sounding like someone hopping from step to step on one leg. "Ah, at last, good old Dab Dab," cried the doctor. And then I thought I really must be dreaming. Craning her neck around the bend of the landing, hopping on one leg, came a spotless white duck, and in her right foot she carried a lighted candle. Here's another picture, and in her right foot she carried a lighted candle, so you can see what Dab Dab looked like. The hall was full of animals. The doctor took the candlestick from the duck and turned to me. "You must get those wet clothes off. By the way, what is your name?" "Tommy Stubbins," I said. "The son of Jacob Stubbins, the shoemaker?" "Yes," I said. "Excellent bootmaker, your father," said the doctor. "You see these?" He held up the boot. "On his enormous right foot. Your father made these 4 years ago, and I've been wearing them ever since. Well now, Stubbins, you've got to change those wet things. You can wear an old suit of mine until yours dries by the fire." More candles were lit around the house. We went upstairs into the bedroom. The doctor opened a wardrobe and took out 2 suits of old clothes, and we put them on. We carried our wet clothes down to the kitchen and started a fire in the big chimney. The doctor's coat was so big on me, I kept stepping on the coattails while helping to get wood from the cellar. Soon we had a huge fire burning. "Now let's cook some supper," said the doctor. "You'll stay and have supper, of course." I was beginning to be very fond of this funny little man who treated me like a grown-up friend. When he asked me to have supper with him, I felt terribly proud and happy, but I suddenly remembered that I had not told my mother I would be late. "Thank you very much. I would like to stay, but I'm afraid my mother would worry if I don't get back." "Oh, but my dear Stubbins," said the doctor, "your clothes aren't dry yet. You'll have to wait for them. By the time they are ready, we'll have supper cooked and eaten." The doctor felt around inside his bag, and first he pulled out a loaf of new bread, and then came a glass jar of a strange top to it. He held this up to the light very carefully before he set it on the table. I could see an odd little water creature swimming about inside. At last the doctor brought out a pound of sausages. Now, he said, all we want is a frying pan. We went into the kitchen where pots and pans hung from the wall. The doctor reached for a frying pan. While he cooked, I went to look at the creature swimming in the glass jar. What is this animal? I asked. That's a whiff-waff, said the doctor. Its proper name is Hippocampus pipitibus. But the natives just call it a whiff-waff because of the way it waves its tail to swim, I imagine. That's why I went on this last voyage. I'm trying to learn the language of the shellfish. Why? I asked. Some of the shellfish are the oldest animals in the world. If I could talk their language, I could learn a whole lot about what the world was like ages ago. We sat at the kitchen table to eat. It was a wonderful kitchen. It was very cozy, homelike and warm. The fireplace was like a room in itself. You could get right inside it, even when the logs were burning, and sit on the wide seats on either side and roast chestnuts, listen to the kettle singing, tell stories, or look at picture books at the light of the fire. It was just like the doctor, comfortable, sensible, friendly, and solid. While we were gobbling away, the door opened, and in marched the duck Dib-Dab and the dog Jip, dragging sheets and pillowcases in behind them over the clean tiled floor. Seeing my look of surprise, the doctor explained, they're just going to air the bedding for me in front of the fire. Dab-Dab is a treasure of a housekeeper. She never forgets anything. The doctor said a few words to the dog and the duck in some strange talk and signs, and they seemed to understand him perfectly. Can you talk in squirrel language? I asked. Oh, yes, that's quite an easy language, said the doctor. You could learn that without a great deal of trouble. Why do you ask? I told the doctor about the squirrel I had rescued from the hawk. Could you look at him tomorrow? Well, if his leg is badly broken, I think I had better see him tonight. It may be too late to do much, but I'll come home with you and take a look at him. We felt the clothes by the fire, and mine were dry, and I had changed in the bedroom. When I came down, the doctor was waiting for me with a little black bag full of medicines and bandages. Come along, he said. The rain has stopped now. Outside, it had grown quite bright again. Thrushes were singing in the garden as we opened the gate to go down onto the road.